I didn't just ruin my sister's career. I didn't just embarrass her or overreact, like the internet keeps saying. I shattered our family's entire reality in real time, during a live broadcast watched by nearly 50,000 people. When I stood up at the dinner table and told her, on camera, that her so-called signature dish wasn't bold or misunderstood or avant-garde. I told her it was a toxic, inedible biohazard that belonged in a dumpster, not on a dinner table. And I knew the second those words left my mouth that there was no undoing them. No apology big enough, no explanation that would matter in that moment. You're probably already ready to tear me apart in the comments, to label me the evil brother, the jealous hater who couldn't stand watching his sister succeed. I get it, that's how it looked. But before you hit that report button or type that hate comment, you need to understand why I did it. You need to see the medical records. You need to know about the terrifying secret I discovered hidden in her pantry. Something she was willing to risk our lives for just to protect an online image. This wasn't about ego. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about survival. My sister, Maya, had fallen so deep into the influencer rabbit hole that she stopped seeing us as family and started seeing us as props. We weren't people anymore, we were background characters in her viral Aesthetic Eats series. Every meal became content. Every reaction was measured by engagement. And somewhere along the way, her creativity stopped being quirky or gross and started looking like a crime scene waiting to happen. I spent months biting my tongue. Months nursing stomach cramps in silence. Months watching her ignore every basic food safety rule because a perfect shot mattered more than whether anyone at the table ended the night in the ER. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself I was overreacting. But that night, when she brought out the main course for her elite invite-only dinner, something in me snapped. I realized that if I didn't speak up right then, someone was going to leave our house in an ambulance. And I wasn't going to let that sit on my conscience, even if it meant becoming the most hated man on the internet. The nightmare didn't start with the gala or the screaming or the shattered glasses. It started quietly. The moment Maya's stupid little rainbow pasta video went viral on TikTok and she decided that overnight fame meant she was a self-taught Michelin-level chef who didn't need boring things like recipes, expiration dates, or food safety thermometers anymore. One viral hit turned into dozens, and suddenly she was experimenting non-stop, pushing boundaries just to shock people, throwing together combinations no sane person would eat. Cold brew, infused steak that smelled like sour metal, cereal crust lobster dripping with sugary milk, sauces dyed unnatural colors because they popped on camera. And because she was pulling in thousands of dollars from brand deals, my parents treated her like a genius who could do no wrong, a prodigy whose instincts should never be questioned. I was the only one who noticed what her kitchen was really becoming. A disaster zone disguised as creativity. She'd use the same cutting board for raw chicken and fresh vegetables because it looked rustic. She'd leave meat out under hot lights because steam ruined the aesthetic. And every time I tried to warn her, every time I mentioned cross-contamination or bacteria or basic common sense, she accused me of gaslighting her, of trying to undermine her confidence, of being threatened by her success. It got so bad that I started hiding protein bars and packaged snacks in my room, eating in secret like I was doing something shameful, because I was genuinely afraid of what she'd serve next. When she caught me one night, she didn't ask why I was scared. She had a full emotional meltdown, crying and screaming that I was destroying her brand confidence and making her look unstable. To keep the peace, my parents took her side and forced me to sign what they called a support agreement, a piece of paper that legally and emotionally cornered me into promising I'd smile, nod, and play the role of the proud brother at her biggest event yet. A live-streamed, 6-course gala designed to launch her cookbook and cement her status as a culinary icon. But what they were calling a gala was already shaping up to be a horror show, and I just didn't know yet how fast everything was about to collapse the moment the first plate hit the table. The night of the gala felt less like a family dinner and more like stepping onto a movie set, because our house had been completely transformed with ring lights blasting artificial daylight into every corner, multiple high-end cameras mounted at impossible angles, cables running across the floor like tripwires, and several high-profile local food critics sitting shoulder to shoulder at our dining table, all smiling politely while checking the live viewer count climbing higher and higher on their phones as Maya floated around the room in full influencer mode, wearing a $1,000 dress and speaking in that performative, breathy tone she only used when she knew thousands of strangers were watching her. I tried to stay calm, but the smell coming from the kitchen made my eyes sting and my stomach tighten. It wasn't the rich, savory smell of food. It was sharp and acidic, like burnt hair mixed with cleaning chemicals. The kind of smell that makes your body recoil before your brain can explain why. When Maya finally emerged with the star of the night, a dish she proudly called citrus fermented poultry with charcoal glaze, my heart dropped, because the chicken was an unnatural gray, slick with slime, sitting in a shallow pool of pinkish liquid that looked disturbingly like raw juices, and when I glanced at the critic beside me, I saw his confident smile vanish as he poked the meat and watched it wobble. I leaned toward Maya and whispered as quietly as I could, "This is raw, Maya, you're going to kill someone." But instead of listening, she laughed directly into the microphone, telling the audience that I was jealous, unrefined, and incapable of understanding high-concept fermentation. That was the moment something inside me snapped, because I realized she wasn't just ignoring me. She was choosing the audience over our lives. I stood up, grabbed the plate, and slammed it down on the table so hard that wine glasses shattered and everyone froze, and I yelled, "This isn't high concept, it's a death sentence. This chicken is raw, this kitchen is a health hazard, and this entire brand is a lie built on filters, expired groceries, and straight-up negligence." As gasps rippled through the room and the live stream chat exploded, I stormed into the kitchen, through open cabinets in the pantry, and started pulling out bags of rotten produce, expired meat, and unlabeled containers she'd been hiding for color and texture. holding them up to the cameras so the world could finally see the disgusting truth behind the perfect photos. The fallout was instant and brutal, because the live stream cut off mid-chaos. The critics practically ran out of the house without finishing their wine, and within minutes my phone was exploding with notifications labeling me the toxic brother, the jealous psychopath, and the man who deliberately sabotaged his sister's career on the biggest night of her life. And by the time the sun came up, I had been dragged across every major social media platform, doxxed, threatened, and dissected by strangers who had decided they knew my intentions better than I did. My parents kicked me out that same night, refusing to hear a word I said, and I spent the next 3 days in a cheap roadside motel, watching Maya upload tearful apology videos where she painted herself as the victim and me as a controlling abuser who couldn't handle a strong woman's success. Then, on the 4th morning, everything changed with a single phone call from a local hospital, because it wasn't just Maya who had been admitted. Our parents and 2 of the critics who had actually taken a bite before I stopped them were also being treated for severe bacterial infections. Doctors confirmed what I had been screaming about. The poultry was dangerously undercooked, contaminated, and laced with toxins, and the most horrifying discovery came when investigators traced the source of the charcoal glaze, revealing that Maya had used a non-food grade black pigment purchased from an art supply store because it looked blacker on camera than real activated charcoal. When I walked into the hospital ward, I didn't see a powerful influencer or a public figure. I saw my little sister shaking in a hospital bed, partially blinded, hooked up to IVs, sobbing in real fear as she finally understood that her obsession with maintaining a flawless online image had nearly killed our parents and strangers alike, and that the outburst everyone hated me for was the only reason the body count wasn't higher. Recovery was slow, painful, and humiliating for everyone involved, because the aftermath didn't just include hospital bills and public apologies. It brought lawsuits, health department investigations, massive fines, and the complete collapse of everything Maya had built online, with every brand deal quietly disappearing and every sponsor distancing themselves as fast as possible. But in a strange way, that destruction forced something we hadn't done in years. We talked to each other like a real family, without cameras, without phones, without pretending. I moved back home to help during the recovery, and instead of fighting, Maya and I spent long, uncomfortable hours in the kitchen together, not chasing trends or aesthetics, but reading actual food safety manuals, learning why temperatures matter, why cross-contamination kills, and how cooking is supposed to protect people, not endanger them. Maya eventually walked away from the influencer world entirely, admitting that her hunger for validation had turned her into someone she didn't recognize or respect, and she enrolled in a real culinary school, starting at the bottom washing dishes and taking orders instead of soaking up praise. Today, she works as the head chef at a small farm-to-table bistro where the lighting is terrible and no one is filming, but the food is honest, safe, and genuinely good, and our family has one unbreakable rule now. No phones at the table and absolute, brutal honesty about every meal. Last night she made me a simple pasta dish, nothing flashy, nothing viral, and when she nervously asked what I thought, I smiled and told her it was finally edible, and instead of crying or getting defensive, she laughed, hugged me, and for the first time in years it felt like we had our sister back. Sometimes you really do have to burn everything down to rebuild something worth living in, and our bond now is stronger than any viral video could ever be, which is why I'll always ask this question to anyone watching. If you were in my place, would you have stayed silent and risked lives, or would you have told the truth even if it meant being hated?